Hi there. So this video is going to show you how you can use Excel in order to find some descriptive statistics. So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of walk through some of the basic concepts dealing with descriptive statistics, and then after we talk about it, I'm going to go ahead and open a new Excel spreadsheet and we will actually give this a try. So in order to use Excel for descriptive statistics, you're going to be using Excel formulas. And what we're going to do is we're going to use it to find the mean, the median, the mode, we know what all of those things are, the minimum and the maximum, which are just different words for the smallest and the largest values in the data set. We're also going to use it to find the range. There's not a specific formula for range in Excel, but we can use maximum and minimum in order to calculate the range. So the range is found by taking the largest value and subtracting the smallest. And then we can also find percentiles. And those are just a count from smallest to largest. And we can divide basically our group of values into 100 different percentiles. The ones that we were able to do by hand pretty easily are the 25th, the 50th, and the 75th. And if you remember, the 50th percentile is actually just the same thing as the median. But we can do other percentiles that aren't maybe as nice when actually using Excel. So there are a couple of kind of notes that I wanted to make here before we actually open up our Excel. So the first thing is to just kind of look at what a formula might look like, okay? So once you have your data set actually entered into a spreadsheet, there are a lot of Excel functions that are going to give the summary statistics to us. And if you look at the little screenshot shown over here, this has kind of a list of exam scores, and then it has some labels and some values. And if this were like an active sheet and I were able to click in it, each of these cells from E2 all the way down to E10, they would contain an actual formula. And over here is kind of a list of the formulas that they used. So mean is actually found by typing equals average and then selecting your data. So there is no mean, there's an average. Median is equals and then median, and then you select your data. Mode is equals mode. Minimum is equals min. Maximum is equals max. For the range, we have to use the maximum and the minimum, so I'll show you guys a couple options for that. And then percentiles are the only ones that are a little bit trickier. So we still type equals percentile like we might expect. But then we select our data, and then we have to put a comma, and then we have to actually enter what percentile we want. And percentiles in Excel are going to be written as decimals. So if you want the 10th percentile, if you think about 10%, we would write that as a decimal as 0.1. So this would be a 0.1 here. If we want 25th percentile, it'd be 0.25, and so on. Now, a couple of other just kind of quick notes before I open Excel. So you'll notice in Excel that there is more than one definition for percentiles. So there are a few options in Excel. Percentile and percentile.inc both include values of 0 and 100 as possible percentiles, while percentile.exc excludes 0 and 100 as possible percentiles values. For our particular class, you could just stick to using the plain old percentile, okay? So you don't have to worry about that too much. Now, one thing that we kind of talked about on the previous slide was that when you're finding percentiles, the number after the comma tells which percentile is desired. It has to be between 0 and 1, and it has to be written as a decimal. So we talked about the fact that if you want 25th percentile, you write that as 0.25. And then the other thing we kind of briefly mentioned as well is that there is not a specific Excel function for range. So we're going to use something called cell references to subtract the maximum and the minimum in order to get our range. So what I want to do here is go ahead and open up an Excel sheet. Now I am using a Mac, so this might look a little different than what you're used to. The formulas are all going to be identical though. So I'm just going to open up a new worksheet. Let me move this here so we can see it. So it kind of fills our screen here. All right, so here's our Excel workbook. And all I'm going to do is just make up some data. It really doesn't matter what our data looks like. So we'll go with exam scores. I am going to go ahead and actually have Excel make up some data so that I can be kind of lazy. So I'm going to have it, you don't have to know how to do this, I'm going to have it create random numbers between 40 and 90 for me. And I'm just going to drag this down so you can ignore what I'm doing right now. I'm just creating some data for us. All right. So give me one other second to just get these values in here. Okay, so these are just some fake exam scores that I have here. And we're gonna go ahead and just use these as examples to find some of our descriptive statistics. So I'm gonna create just a list over here of the things that I wanna find. So I wanna find mean, median, mode. I wanna find the minimum, the maximum, the range. I want to find, let's say, the 20th percentile. Let's find some kind of funny ones. And maybe the 70th percentile. Let's just go with that. So let's look at some different things. Or let's change that. Let's do like maybe a non-nice number, 73rd percentile. Okay. Now, I just put these here kind of to organize my data, basically, so that when I have my formulas over here, I know what it's referring to. Now, a couple of things I kind of want to talk about if you haven't used Excel before. So I do some of these things without really even thinking about it because I've used this program a bunch. Hopefully that will be the case for you as well in a couple of weeks. But if there's anything that you ever have a question on, you can always email me. But one thing I want you to notice is how to kind of make columns wider or more narrow. So if you notice here, I think I did this without even thinking. I made this column a little bit wider so that it would fit. So if I had left it how it was, what happens is that these percentile, these words are kind of overlapping with column D, so they're going to get covered up when I put things here. So in order to make the column the correct width, what you can do is you can go up to here and you'll see kind of this down arrow first, and then if you scroll so that you're like right between two columns, so in between C and D, all you actually have to do is double click with your mouse. So I'm just going to double click here, and Excel is a pretty nice tool. It's going to automatically size it to the correct width for your data. So if you have data that's kind of skinny, it's going to make the cell or basically the whole column skinnier. If you have data that's pretty wide, it's going to make that whole column wider. So now all that I'm going to do is just type some Excel formulas in here and make it do all of the work for me. So anytime you want to type an Excel formula, the very first thing you have to do is type an equals sign. And that just kind of tells Excel, okay, there's a formula coming. So I'm going to type equals. And then if you guys are looking at your textbook, that might be helpful. If you're not super comfortable with these yet, mean is just average. So what's going to happen is I'm going to start typing average, and Excel is going to kind of guess what I want to do. And it comes up with a few different functions. The one I want is just plain old average, and that's this one right here. So I'm going to be pretty lazy. I don't want to have to type the whole word. So I'm just going to select this. I'm going to double click, and oops, let me undo that. Let me start that over so it doesn't have a mistake in it. So I'm going to do equals, start to type average. It's going to pop up here, and actually I just have to click it once. On a Windows computer, I'm not sure if you have to click it once or twice. But now all I need to do is actually select my data. Okay, I need to tell it what I want the average of. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and select all the way from my first score to my last score. And all I'm doing with my mouse is I'm clicking and dragging. So I'm clicking here and dragging all the way to the bottom of my data. And once you have that, you just have to hit enter, and it will automatically calculate the mean for you. Now let's try it again. Let's do some other things that are very similar. So for median, I'm going to start typing equals and then median. And the only function, I guess, that starts with ME is median. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the word median. And then again, I'm going to click and drag and select all of my data here that I want to find the median of. And then again, on my keyboard, I hit enter, and it's found the median for me. I'm going to do mode next. So again, equals and then mode. There are a couple of different modes. I just want plain old mode. Okay, so I'm just going to select this last one that just says mode. So I click on it, and then I select my data. Oops. Let me delete A1, I don't want that in there. There we go. Select all this data, hit enter, and I have a mode of 48, so I must have, oh yeah, I have a 48 here and then another 48 here. Now to find minimum, I do equals and min, and here's min right here. Just click, and again, select my data. Same idea for maximum, it's equals and then max. Click on the function that you want and highlight your data. Range, so in order to find range, you take the highest number and subtract the lowest number. So you have a couple of options for typing this into Excel. I'm going to show you guys a couple right now. You can kind of pick the one you like. First thing I could do is I could type equals, and then I know that my maximum is right here, so I'm just going to click on it. So that's going to take my maximum value, and then I want to subtract, so I just do a minus sign on my keyboard, and I want to subtract the minimum. And that gives me a value of 46. This works completely fine, okay? The only issue with this particular formula is if I deleted this maximum or minimum, then my range formula would not work. So I'm just going to show you one other option right over here that will give me the same exact solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the maximum and minimum formulas together. So I know that in order to find the maximum, I can type equals max and select my data. And then what I want to do is I want to subtract the minimum. So then I do minus and then have Excel find the minimum. Now it's not going to automatically select minimum for me here. So I'm going to have to type the whole thing, and I'm going to type it in caps so hopefully it recognizes that it's a function. I'm going to put the parentheses there, and now it's recognizing, oh, you want the minimum function. And then I select my data again. And oops, I forgot one here. If you forget a data point, you don't have to redo everything. You can just kind of go to the bottom right corner and drag it down. All right, so now all of my data is selected. So what Excel is going to do is it's going to take the maximum of my data and then subtract the minimum of my data. And oh, it tells me that there's an error. The error is my missing parenthesis there, okay? Excel is pretty smart though. It knows that I want a parenthesis there, so it's automatically corrected it for me. So yes, I want the correction that they did. They added that parenthesis in that I forgot. And we got a value of 46. Now I think that this one over here in D6 is a little bit easier. You're just taking max minus min, and that's completely fine to use. Now for percentile, that's kind of the last thing here. I type equals, I start to type percentile, and again, like we talked about on those slides, there are a few options, okay? And all you want is just the normal old percentile, okay, that looks like this. So I'm just gonna click on it. And again, you start by highlighting your data. And then what you do is you put a comma, because that tells Excel that you're going to put in the next kind of argument to the function. So the first argument that you're putting in is the actual data. The second thing that you're going to put in is you're going to tell Excel what percentile you want. So we want the 20th percentile. If you think about 20%, we would write that as a decimal as 0.2. So that's all I'm going to type there. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now I want to show you one other way to do this. Okay, so I'm going to type equals percentile again. We're going to kind of start the same way. I'm going to select all my data. I'm going to put a comma. And then the other thing I could type in is I can actually use the percent sign on my keyboard. So I can type 20 and then percent, and Excel will also accept that. So you can either change it to a decimal, or you can put it in with a percent sign on your actual keyboard. Same idea for the 73rd percentile. So I type equals percentile, I highlight my data, and then I have to put a comma to tell Excel that I'm going to enter the next piece of information, and then I'm going to type 0.73, or again, just to see it one more time, I can do the same thing. Percentile, highlight my data, so I'm just clicking and dragging, putting a comma, and I could do 73%, and that would work as well, okay? So a couple of options there. So this is really the whole tutorial. There's one other tiny thing that I want to show you guys while you're watching, just to kind of make things look a little nicer, okay? And then there's one sort of shortcut that I want to show you as well. So the first thing is to just make things look a little bit nicer. I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra numbers that I have here, this column. If you ever find yourself with an extra column that you want to delete, it's really easy. You can just click on the column name and then right click and do delete, and it will just get rid of it for you. Basically clears everything out. So what you'll notice here is that I have different number of decimal places kind of with all of my numbers, and probably what would be nice is if I were able to be consistent with this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to highlight all of these. Okay, so I'm just clicking and dragging so everything is highlighted. And let's just say for kind of consistency's sake that I want everything to have 1 decimal. So I'm going to round basically to the nearest tenth. So what you'll notice, and this might look a little bit different on a Windows computer, but you will find buttons that look like this. If you look for the currency, it's normally to the right of that. This one right here, if you kind of mouse over it, it's going to tell you that it increases the number of decimal places. This one over here decreases the number of decimal places. So let's just take a look because these are kind of all different. So if I do decrease, what happens is it's using the one with the most decimals, and now it's added a bunch of zeros kind of on the end of some of these, okay, so that they're all the same precision. Now, I don't want that many decimal places, so I'm just going to decrease this, and I'm going to continue to click this until I get the desired number, which would be just 1 number after the decimal. Now, this is kind of nice because everything is now formatted the same, and it just looks kind of nice and pretty. You don't need to do that, but it's kind of a nice thing to do. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that when we are selecting our data for the mean, the median, and the mode, if you notice how I did it before, let me just redo one of these really quickly. I typed equals, I typed average, and then I basically just clicked and dragged all the way to the bottom of my data from the top. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now if I go in and let's say I forgot to enter someone's exam score, so I enter it in here, none of my numbers are going to change because this 90 is not actually selected. So what I would have to do if I wanted to fix these is I'd have to go in and expand my selection, which is not very convenient. So I just want to show you one other way of setting this up that would kind of avoid that issue. So when you go to type equals average, you still type it the same way, you still select this. But if you want to select the entire column, you can actually just click on the column name here. So I can just click on A, and it's going to take the average of any data that is in that column. And now I hit enter, and now my 90 is actually included in my data set. So now if I get rid of the 90, it is going to change my mean. So it brought my mean down because I got rid of a high observation. And let's say this 53 should have been a 93. Now if I go in and change that, it changes my median and my mean and all of this stuff. So this is why Excel is really nice, because if you mistype something, you can always fix it without having to redo all of your calculations. But again, if you don't want to have to select your entire data set for all of these, you can just click on column A. So let me do this for the median as well, just so you can see it one more time. So I'm going to type equals median. And then instead of having to click and drag all the way down here, I'm just going to click on column A and it's going to select the whole thing for me. And then I hit enter. So hopefully this was helpful. You should be able to complete the Excel portion of your homework at this point. But please email me if you have any questions at all.